Hi, I'm Chris, and statistically speaking, 40% of you have already clicked away. No, come back. Please don't go. Stay. Okay, they're gone now. Now it's just you and me. How you doing? Just kidding. I know you're not okay.
I don't think you care about money, do you?
No, actually, no, I mean, listen, like...
Yeah, things have gotten a lot worse since we've last spoken, but let's not kid ourselves. Things have been pretty bad for a while.
I've been paying medical bills on my son for 9 years since he was born. He was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I just got his prescription. It was $1,000. I couldn't pay for it. I now have to go in and tell my 9-year-old son I couldn't pay for it. I work a full-time job. My husband works a full-time job. I work third shift. I go to school during the day. How are you guys making it? Am I the only one struggling?
And that's exactly why we have shows like Squid Game, Severance, Succession, Black Mirror, Made, Upload, Cyberpunk, and an even longer list of films, books, and video games that exist to explicitly and artistically address what I like to call the horrors. Oh dear God, the horrors. Now, you're probably pretty aware of the popular sentiment that anti-capitalist art is pretty ironic, right? You know, because it's funded and distributed by the thing that it's critiquing, and is usually turned into a cavalcade of branded merchandise and spin-offs, degrading the message of the original work, which also has the added effect of boring people with oversaturation of the product, which makes the thing less culturally meaningful even as it increases in cultural ubiquity. All right, I'll hang a lampshade on it. You're watching an anti-capitalist video on YouTube right now. Uh-oh. And some people would suggest that that's a very trite thing for you to do, and for me to make. And we should all feel bad about ourselves for wanting to talk about the elephant in the room that's sitting on our face. Not like that. I mean, don't be gross. Should have used the boot as the metaphor. The boot is a better metaphor. The elephant has boots on and it's squishing her face. Let's talk about Squid Game for a second. You know the backstory, of course. Season 1 gets released. It's very popular. It's a scathing look at capitalist society. Articles are published, and almost immediately the market does its thing. The show even gets recreated in the real world twice and is every bit as cruel and exploitative as it is in the series, just, you know, minus the killing. Some people point out the obvious. What can we learn from all of this? That the billionaire class is so unafraid of criticism that they happily sell it back to us? That whatever art being distributed by them and their shitty little corporations must be fundamentally toothless, presenting no real threat to the hollow, miserable men that own the only viable means of distribution? Or, as it was recently put in another creator's video about Squid Game,
fuck capitalism for its constant recuperation of any radical message. Disco Elysium quote, Disco Elysium quote, Disco Elysium quote.
One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat, all they want. Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique capital end up reinforcing it instead.
Ah, yes, that Disco Elysium quote. You know, I'm something of a Disco Elysium appreciator myself. And this isn't a question for Jack, it's a question for you. Do you think it might be significant that this quote is spoken by a character who is a capitalist herself? One who is diegetically committed to the idea that nothing can fundamentally change because her moral sense of self and pursuit of her passions rely on this worldview? Perhaps these questions will come back later to haunt us.
Chekhov's gun is a dramatic principle.
Anyway, let's talk about some fresh examples of anti-capitalist art and see if we can't get to the bottom of every problem that's ever existed. We're gonna go through a lot of shows and it's gonna take hours, like 5, 6, 7 hours. Don't look at the timestamp.
잘 봐. 네 영웅놀이의 결과가 어떤 건지.
기훈아.
Actually, you know what? Never mind. I don't get to just put this on in the background while I soothingly recount plot points to you that you already know. I'm not your falling asleep content, okay? This isn't Spark Notes or something. Have your own opinion on art. Honestly, cards on the table. I did have a whole thing written out about the second season of Squid Game and Severance and Transatlantic, which is a great show. Like, you should really watch that show. I worked on writing that part of this script for like a week and a half, and once I was done, I read it back and I was like, oh, this sucks. No one needs this. You can just trust me that there are a bunch of shows out there about how the world isn't working very well right now. I mean, you've seen them. You've seen all the shows. And my whole point was going to be that, like, even if they're ultimately corporate products that wind up defanging their message so that they can be fit for distribution, you can still just like listen to them. Right? Like the good parts of them, not the compromised parts. And then, maybe get politically involved. Because no joke, America has like 2 dictators right now, and it's not cool. But honestly, I felt like the whole argument was just kind of weak sauce, Because if art, especially popular art, was going to inspire you to take action, you'd be doing it already, right? Disco Elysium quote. So no more media analysis for you, okay? This is now a science channel.
So check me out.
Because all of this got me thinking, right? You and me, we're going to do an experiment. Since this too is a creative work on a corporate platform, we're going to test out the veracity of this quote. Can I convince you in the span of this video to put your time and energy into doing political shit in the era of American Nazism, as opposed to just thinking and talking and consuming content about it? Is that even possible when I, paradoxically, want your fucking eyeballs? It seems like a tall order, but I am a very special person, so, there's no real shit. All right, fine. Maybe I'll talk about Squid Game a little, just for the sake of the experiment. Maybe if I do media analysis hard enough. So my take on Squid Game is I like the second season more than the first because it's asking a fundamentally different question. The first season is just asking who's going to win, right? It's saying this is what society is like. It's cruel. Woe is us. But who's going to get the money and what kind of toll will it take on the characters? That's why we care. That's why we get invested, because we're rooting for the character's personal success. But from jump, season 2 is only really concerned with how could this horrible game be stopped. As an audience, we're still interested in who wins, in who lives or dies, but for a completely different reason. Will they succeed in destroying Squid Game? Can the elites be defeated? And I find that framing this season in this way kind of makes the games themselves harder to fetishize in real life, right? That relay race on the merry-go-round just don't seem as sexy as the games in the first season. And I think that's partly just because the games aren't the actual narrative focus this time around. In fact, much more emphasis is placed on the rounds of voting between each game, when the players themselves decide whether or not to continue toward almost certain death or split the money and run. And wouldn't you know it, given the choice between the obvious false promise of prosperity and returning to the status quo, which does suck super hard, each and every time they vote, there are too many people who either can't understand that they're voting against their own interests, or who are voting for their own interests because they've absorbed the fundamentally misanthropic worldview that justifies such a cruel society, completely unable to understand that they're being exploited. Or maybe they do understand, but they just don't care because they want to be exploiters themselves. Commentary! Ultimately, our hero realizes that you just can't get everyone to become class conscious, and so he and his group realize that instead of spending all their energy and time fighting their fellow bootlicking players who are absolutely a lost cause, they need to focus their efforts on taking down the elites themselves, who are sitting pretty as they hide behind a shield of working class and fighting. Commentary!
Wow! Let's maybe not drop the $50 mics, okay, guys?
So how can our players take down the elites directly and effectively, according to the show?
총기를 다룰 줄 아는 분들 중에서 저희와 함께 가실 분들은 앞으로 나와주세요.
Oh. Oh. Ooh. Well, surely this isn't something that the show is prescribing society, right? It's a metaphor. A metaphor for, yes, a metaphor in an otherwise incredibly literal work of art. There's no way we're meant to reflect on the efficacy of escalating things, right? The season does end on a cliffhanger, right at the all hope is lost moment in the hero's journey. Their militant uprising, seemingly a failed effort. Who knows where the story goes from there? It's possible the show is saying this really isn't a good way to fight back against the powers that be. But I don't know. Makes you think, right?
Please, help! Luigi!
Even though Squid Game might ultimately take the plot in a direction that eschews militancy, we could still take what we learned from it before those moments and... I don't know. See what I mean? Weak sauce, right? Ugh, just feels like a stretch. All right, this definitely isn't working. I'm just gonna write this down. Avoid media analysis as a tool of persuasion. Okay, let's try something else. Let's read some theory. Let's start at the beginning with Karl Marx, Das Kapital. All right, hang on a second. Let me just see. We are only concerned with the phenomenon in its integrity, and we therefore assume its progress to be normal. If the conversion take place at all, that is, if the commodity be not absolutely unsaleable, its metamorphosis does not take place, although the price realized may be abnormally above or below the value. This is Well, that's fine. We'll start with something more modern, more concerned with the present day, and work our way up to the really dense stuff. I don't know, maybe it's something like the prison industrial complex and its effect on black communities. It definitely seems like a timely and urgent cause that white people like myself should probably dedicate some time to, so. The division of labor converts the product of labor. I don't know, is any of this theory really getting through to you? I guess it gives me some desire to go out and do something, but mostly it just makes me feel like a very clever boy. Let's try something else. Have I mentioned things are bad in America lately? Okay, so you've read some theory, you've seen a bajillion movies and shows and games and books. What else do you need from me? Citations? I'll get you some pull quotes. Pull quotes are easy. Actually, you know what? Some of these quotes are pretty spicy. I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. And I've heard that the algorithm can like scan your video for the text that you display in it. I'm not sure that's actually true, but I have heard that. The threat of a panopticon is cowing me into self-censorship and conformity. I got it. I'll flash the quotes up really quickly, but you're gonna have to stop listening to me in the background. Find the tab that you have me buried under. Don't be rude. Splitting your attention won't fix the horrors you're afraid to face when things are silent. All right, you got some quotes. And by extension, some book recommendations too, so, put that in your back pocket. Let's see, what else do you need? I could lecture you. But, I said in my last video that I wasn't gonna try to fix you anymore. And I wanna remain true to myself. So I'll just say, do what you want, right? Just do what you want. But just know that whatever that is, it's actually your choice. The truth is, we all dance to the tune of algorithms these days, and it makes hypocrites of us all. But then again, hypocrisy is a tribute to virtue, right? In other words, instead of just focusing on the hypocrisy of artists and creators or whoever else on the internet, you could just decide to unplug and embody the virtue that all of us phonies are signaling.
Bravo.
All right, so maybe lectures don't work. Ooh, metaphors. I'll try some If artists and creators are forced to dance, then we decided long ago to tap in Morse code. There's a file in the cake. Even if it's on Netflix or YouTube or released in theaters, art can contain contraband. Why else do you think leftists care so much about media literacy? That last one wasn't a metaphor. Okay, maybe you know all this stuff already. In which case, I'd say to you, if you've already gotten the message, then hang up the phone. Especially important these days because the phone is essentially bugged and designed to be addictive. Ha! That last one was both literal and a metaphor. TikTok is basically malware. You guys get that, right?
And welcome to a very special cybersecurity tip video featuring Momo.
Be honest with me. I'm still buried underneath a tab somewhere, aren't I? You've already switched back to that TikTok girl or that reel where the guy makes the chicken dish with too much fucking cheese. That's just rage bait. No one wants to eat chicken like that. Look at his eyes. He doesn't like it. He knows what he's doing to you. This doesn't seem to be working. I guess none of this really does matter. All critiques of capital become subsumed by the Disco Elysium quote. Okay, never mind. I'll just course correct. It's no big deal. This video doesn't have a message anymore. Let's talk about Disco Elysium. The tragic line in question is actually spoken by the character
Joyce L. Messier. I represent the board of Wild Pines, the owners of the harbor.
An enormous shipping company whose name recalls a wooded area. Joyce is a kind, wistful soul who is also sort of a terrible person. Definitionally and ideologically, she is a major capitalist. She looks down on monarchy and detests bureaucracy, but given the state of the world that she's in, she's beginning to become disillusioned with her place in it. She often uses double irony to express her distaste in the effects of capitalism. She can see the ugliness of it all. There's even a hint of shame in her. She even admits, almost longingly, that perhaps the leftists of the failed revolution in years prior might have done a better job of running things if given the chance. Basically, Joyce is like a lot of people's middle-class parents right now. This is the context for that Disco Elysium quote. I don't think it's meant to be seen or taken as a truth of the world, but rather a truth of people like Joyce and the worldview that they rely on. She understands the cruelty of capitalism, but believes it's inevitable, nasty, regrettable business, but implacable. Resistance is futile.
One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat all they want.
What can I say? I'm all about exploring truth through character. With this worldview, Joyce is free to use her immense wealth to pursue her passion for travel without a guilty conscience, neatly framing the horrors of iniquity and her place within them as simply an inevitable facet of the somber poetry that she sees in the world. Disco Elysium is itself a critique of capital. And Joyce Messier's words certainly do seem prophetic when you know what happened to the studio that made the game. Basically, the original creators had their IP stolen and were forced out by the money men who were behind the business end of things. The exact reasons why are still a bit hazy to the public, but it most likely has something to do with the original creators pushing back against the idea of selling low-quality merch made in sweatshops and turning Disco Elysium into an Amazon Prime TV show. I wonder why the creators felt that way.
We'd like to thank all the great people that came before us. Marx and Engels for providing us the political education.
The accomplishment of this transubstantiation. The fall of Zaum is the ultimate irony, right? It's the Joyce quote incarnate. Now, in the aftermath, members from the original team have all splintered into 3 different development studios, and the most interesting one by far is Summer Eternal. Their evocative red and black website introduces them as an art collective with a manifesto. Guys, it's got some bangers. Our art has been dressed down into an industry, and this industry has been pilfered by corrupt executives, by the vulgar profiteering of corporate bodies moving like leviathans in the dark, burning human fuel in their insatiable lust for money. Dude. We have seen the suffering wrought by the hunger for power, the terror of greed and envy, the complicity of the averted eye. We have seen poverty and we have seen plenty. We will make mistakes, we will win, and we will fail, but we will never forget what we are doing this for. Woof! Damn. They also, at one point in the manifesto, call AI a simulacra, cold comfort, real doll, pocket pussy, cyberspace freezer of an abandoned IM chat. You should just read the whole thing. It's awesome. Summer Eternal is structured as a co-op in such a way that it will allow the artists, workers, and even the players to collectively own the means of production. I mean, that's the idea anyway. Is a critique of capital subsumed if it's also owned by the people? Or is this just an example of a group of artists and developers retching against their shackles as they go down with the ship? These are not fighters, they're not politicians, and they're not activists, but they are doing something. Specifically, they're leveraging the skills they already have and are applying them to the part of their lives that most directly intersects with the powers that be. Which, by the way, is almost always where you work. They're not making bombs to fight back, they blow themselves up. They're not running for office, that's not their style. They're being creative because they're creatives. What are you? Are you a government worker? Do you manage a team? Are you an artist? Can you organize? Can you make medicine? Are you good at building websites? Are you good at marketing? Do you have a military background? Are you familiar with bureaucracy and how to effectively frustrate it? Can you spray paint? It's not a movie. You don't have to be a hero, but you need to leverage something. If you think that running for office is the way forward, then run for office. If you think there is no meaningful change from within the system, then start throwing stuff. Everybody on deck. I'm not going to convince some resistance liberal to become an anarchist, and I'm not going to convince a fellow anarchist to run for office. I'd rather the resistance liberal, become an AOC and the fellow anarchist become a community organizer. I'd rather someone do something, even if they're not as left as I am, than someone doing nothing, right? Point is, the artists of Summer Eternal aren't taking a crushing loss lying down. What's your excuse? Okay, I feel like I've made it pretty clear what I'm trying to say, but I am hopelessly entrenched in a capitalistic machine, and no matter how I kick or scream, I will always be a hypocrite to a degree, which still leaves me concerned that all this sound and fury will never wake you up, but rather sink you deeper into an electronic dreamland. In a simulation of real life, like the internet, politics can only ever be simulated too. That's the theory, right? Okay, so one more try at the experiment. Let's get our hands real dirty, okay? I'm gonna perform an ad for you. Relax, I didn't take a sponsorship, it's an ad for myself. Then afterwards, I'll tell you something about me, a claim you'll never be able to verify, and we'll see if that changes anything about this video that you're watching right now. Okay, here's the ad. I hate my other jobs.
More and more people are crying in the workplace.
I'd be psyched if this or any one of my future videos blew up and got like a bajillion views. I don't think it's gonna happen, especially with this one, but that's up to you, isn't it? share this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell, hit like, leave a comment for the algorithm, go to my website, and consider joining my Patreon so I can keep doing what I love to do. It's got old videos of mine that you can't find elsewhere, other art that I do, yada yada yada. Point is, it helps me do future videos without mid-roll ads, and it helps me pay my bills. All right. That's the ad, okay? Now, I'll tell you something you can't verify. I also would like this video to really get you to stick your neck out, really risk something, and learn something from the creators and artists that are screaming at you from behind the bars of their economic prison by doing whatever it is that you're best positioned to do to move the needle against the rich wannabe Aryan dorks holding the keys to this hellhole. And I'd much rather you do that than subscribe to my channel or like the video or give me money. Now, preferably, I'd like you to do both. At the very least, one of the two, but definitely not neither. So, having said all that, let me ask you, have I been recuperated? Can you hear me? Is it possible for you to still listen? Or are the bars somehow getting in the way? Let me know in the comments below. Boom, that's it. That's the video.